Thank you for your time, Ms. Vance, Evelyn finally said, cutting her off mid-sentence as Alara was explaining her approach to data analysis. We have seen enough. Alara blinked, stunned. But I haven't even had a chance to explain my project on predictive modeling. That will be all, Evelyn stated, already gathering her papers. Brandon offered a condescending smile. We'll be in touch. It was a lie. Alara knew it instinctively. The words hung in the air, heavy with rejection. Defeated, Alara rose, her spirit bruised. As she walked toward the door, she couldn't help but overhear Evelyn's hushed but audible words to Brandon. Honestly, Brandon, did you see her? That cheap suit, those scuffed shoes, and that ridiculous story about helping some old man. So unprofessional. Clearly not sterling material. We need someone with a certain polish. Someone who understands priorities, not charity cases. Brandon chuckled, a low, dismissive sound. Exactly. Good riddance. We need someone who can play the game, not someone who stops for every fallen pigeon. The words struck Alara like a physical blow, a cold, hard truth of the superficial world she was trying so desperately to enter. She pushed through the doors, her eyes stinging, the grand lobby now feeling like a mocking echo chamber of their cruel dismissal. The heavy weight on her shoulders returned, now amplified by the crushing realization that her last, best hope had just been snatched away, not by lack of ability, but by prejudice and a cynical disregard for basic human decency. The walk home felt heavier than the walk to the interview. The vibrant energy of the city, which had once felt like a promise, now seemed to mock Alara's deflated spirit. Each step was a dragging burden, her mind replaying Evelyn Thorne's cruel words, Brandon Hayes' dismissive chuckle, charity cases, fallen pigeon. The labels stung, far more than the outright rejection. It wasn't just a job she'd lost, it was a glimmer of hope, extinguished by prejudice. When she finally reached their small, cramped apartment, the scent of her mother's meager dinner, rice and a few vegetables, offered a brief, familiar comfort. Her mother, Maria, looked up from the stove, her face a map of worry lines, but her eyes softening as Alara entered. Lily, usually confined to her bed, was propped up on the worn sofa, a thin blanket around her, sketching in a faded notebook. Her small, brave smile was a constant source of both pain and inspiration for Alara. How was it, mi corazón? Maria asked, her voice laced with cautious optimism. Alara forced a smile, a mask she had perfected over years of hardship. She couldn't tell them the full truth, not yet. Not the crushing disdain, the humiliation. They had enough to bear. It was challenging. Mama, she began, choosing her words carefully. They had a lot of candidates. It was a very competitive role. She omitted the part about being late, about the outright dismissal. But I did my best. I answered every question. Maria's shoulders sagged almost imperceptibly, a familiar disappointment passing through her features before she quickly masked it. That's all we can ask for. Hee-hup, you always do your best. She walked over and gently stroked Alara's hair, a gesture that spoke volumes of love and shared struggle. We'll find something else. We always do. Lily looked up, her innocent eyes wide. Did you get the job? Alara, will you be a big boss now? Alara knelt beside her sister, a pang of guilt piercing her heart for the necessary deception. Not yet, sweet pea. It takes time for them to decide. But I'll keep trying. For you. She ruffled Lily's hair, forcing a lightness she didn't feel. The weight of Lily's medical bills pressed down on her, a constant, crushing reminder of the urgency of their situation. The dream of Sterling Holdings, of a salary that could finally ease their burden, seemed impossibly distant now. Meanwhile, across the city, in a grand study adorned with antique mahogany and floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, Arthur Sterling sat at his desk, a steaming cup of herbal tea beside him. He wasn't browsing ancient texts or signing multi-million-dollar deals. Instead, he held a sleek, modern smartphone, his brow furrowed in concentration. Earlier that day, after Alara had left him on the park bench, Arthur had hailed a private car that had been discreetly waiting nearby, summoned by a quick, almost imperceptible hand signal. His fall had indeed been minor, a testament to his surprisingly resilient old bones, but it had served a purpose beyond mere physical discomfort. It had been a test, and Alara Vance had passed with flying colors, while the rest of the city had failed spectacularly. He had been observing the human tide from his bench, watching the cold indifference wash over the scene. Not a single person, not a single one, had stopped to help him, except for Ilara. Her genuine concern, her unwavering kindness despite her own pressing concerns, had profoundly touched him. It was a stark contrast to the cutthroat world he had built, a world he was now, in his twilight years, trying to understand, and perhaps, subtly, to reform. He typed a short, concise message into his phone, sending it to a secure contact. Investigate HR recruitment for junior analyst role. Specifically, the candidate Ilara Vance, interviewed today. Look into Evelyn Thorne and Brandon Hayes. I want a full report by end of day tomorrow. He then made a phone call, his voice, usually gentle, now carrying an undeniable steel. Margaret, it's Arthur. I need you to do something for me. Discreetly. Find out everything you can about a young woman named Ilara Vance. Her sister, Lily, medical condition, family situation. I want to know everything. Margaret, his longtime personal assistant, a woman who had seen and heard everything in Arthur's long career, didn't question. Right away. Mr. Sterling, is there anything else? One more thing, Arthur mused, a faint smile playing on his lips. Check the security footage from the main lobby of Sterling Holdings, specifically around 10 a.m. today. I believe there was a young lady in a somewhat faded blouse and scuffed shoes, carrying a very important-looking resume. He chuckled softly. And perhaps, check the HR office conversations around that time too. If the audio feeds permit, I have a feeling some rather unprofessional opinions might have been voiced. He hung up, leaning back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. He wasn't merely a benevolent old man, he was a titan, a strategist, a man who built an empire on shrewd judgments and an uncanny ability to read people. Ilara Vance had not just helped an old man, she had revealed a character trait far more valuable than any resume bullet point. And now, Arthur Sterling, the reclusive patriarch, intended to ensure that such virtue was not left unrewarded, nor such callousness unpunished. The game, he knew, was far from over. The sun dipped below the city skyline, painting the opulent study of Arthur Sterling in hues of orange and purple. The silence was broken only by the soft click of his antique grandfather clock and the rustle of papers as Margaret, his sharp, efficient assistant, laid out a meticulous report on his desk. She moved with a practiced grace, her expression unreadable, a testament to decades of service to one of the city's most formidable minds. Everything you requested, Mr. Sterling, Margaret stated, her voice calm and professional. She gestured to the various documents. Security footage from the lobby, audio transcripts from the HR office, and a comprehensive background check on Miss Ilara Vance and her family. Arthur, who had been gazing out the window, turned, his expression grave. He picked up the first document, a transcript of the HR interview. As he read Evelyn Thorne's dismissive remarks and Brandon Hayes's condescending comments, his jaw tightened. The words charity cases and fallen pigeon echoed in his mind, just as they had in Ilara's. A cold anger, rarely seen, began to simmer beneath his calm exterior. He had always despised arrogance and prejudice, especially when directed at those striving for a better life. Next, he reviewed the security footage. He watched Ilara, breathless and late, yet composed, attempting to explain her delay. He saw Evelyn's cold, unyielding face, Brandon's sneering smile. Then, he saw Ilara's shoulders slump as she left, the subtle tremor in her step. It confirmed his suspicions. They had not only rejected her, but they had done so with a callous disregard for her dignity. Finally, he turned to the background report on Ilara. He learned of her parents' struggles, her mother's tireless work, and the devastating blow of Lily's rare, debilitating illness. The report detailed the mounting medical bills, the endless hospital visits, the sacrifices Ilara had made, working odd jobs, sacrificing her own needs, studying late into the night, all to support her family and pursue her dream of a stable career. Her academic records were impeccable, a testament to her fierce intelligence and unwavering determination. He saw the resilience, the grit, the unyielding love that had driven her. Arthur leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment. The pieces clicked into place. Ilara Vance was not just a kind young woman. She was a diamond in the rough, a beacon of integrity and strength in a world too often blinded by superficiality. Her desperation for the job wasn't greed, it was survival, fueled by profound love. His fall had been an unexpected blessing, a chance encounter that revealed more about a candidate than any resume or interview ever could. Evelyn Thorne has been with us for 20 years, Margaret ventured, breaking the silence. A pillar of the HR department, seemingly, Margaret is the operative word, Arthur replied, his voice low, tinged with a dangerous calm. She has forgotten the core values upon which this company was built. Character, integrity, compassion. These are not mere buzzwords. They are the foundation of true success. And Mr. Hayes, he added, a hint of disdain in his tone, seems to be a rather poor imitation of a leader. What would you like to do, Mr. Sterling? Margaret asked, her gaze steady. Knowing that a quiet storm was brewing, Arthur tapped a finger thoughtfully on the desk. I want Elara Vance brought into Sterling Holdings. Not as a junior analyst, not yet, but in a position where her talents can be truly recognized and nurtured, a special project, one that will give her immediate financial stability and the opportunity to prove herself outside the conventional hiring process. He paused, a glint in his eye. And I want it handled very discreetly. No one, absolutely no one, is to know she was rejected by HR. Not yet. Margaret nodded, understanding the subtleties of his command. Arthur Sterling rarely acted without a deeper purpose. As for Ms. Thorne and Mr. Hayes, Arthur continued, his voice hardening slightly, let them continue their work for now. Let them believe their judgments are infallible. The wheels of justice, Margaret, sometimes turn slowly, but they turn surely. A faint, almost imperceptible smile played on his lips. I believe it's time Sterling Holdings had a little reevaluation of its priorities and its material. Margaret left, the faint rustle of her papers the only sound. Arthur remained at his desk, the city lights beginning to twinkle outside his window. He wasn't merely seeking to right a wrong. He was setting a new course for his empire, a course guided by the values he had seen embodied in a simple act of kindness on a busy street. He had pulled the first few strings, subtle and unseen. The game had truly begun, and Elara Vance, unaware, was about to become a central player in a drama far grander than she could ever imagine. Days blurred into a monotonous cycle of searching and rejection for Elara. Each morning brought a renewed surge of hope, quickly deflated by endless online applications, generic rejection emails, or phone calls that never came. The small savings dwindled, and the weight of Lily's needs pressed down harder than ever. She took on a few more odd jobs, tutoring, freelance data entry for a small local business, anything to keep the wolf from the door, but it was barely enough. The city, once a vibrant tapestry of opportunity, now felt like a vast, indifferent machine. One Tuesday afternoon, as Elara was meticulously organizing a stack of invoices for a local grocery store, her phone, usually silent save for the occasional text from her mother, buzzed with an unfamiliar number. It was a private line, displaying no caller ID. She hesitated, almost dismissing it as another telemarketer, but something, a faint whisper of intuition, made her answer. Hello, she said, her voice a little tired. A crisp, professional female voice responded. May I speak with Ms. Elara Vance? This is Elara, she replied, a flicker of curiosity stirring. Elara's breath hitched. Sterling Holdings. The name hung in the air, a ghost of her recent humiliation. Her mind immediately conjured Evelyn Thorne's sneer and Brandon Hayes' dismissive laughter. Was this some kind of formal notification of her rejection? A polite but firm, never call us again? Her heart sank. Sterling Holdings. Elara repeated, her voice barely a whisper. I had an interview there last week for a junior analyst position. I wasn't successful. Yes, Ms. Vance, we are aware of your previous interview. Margaret's voice remained perfectly neutral, devoid of judgment. However, Mr. Sterling himself has taken a personal interest in your application. He would like to offer you a unique opportunity. He wishes to engage you for a special, confidential project directly under his supervision. Elara blinked, utterly bewildered. Arthur Sterling, the CEO, a special, confidential project. Her mind raced, trying to reconcile this astonishing statement with the cold, hard rejection she had received. It made no sense. This had to be a mistake, a prank, or perhaps she hadn't heard correctly. I'm sorry. Did you say Mr. Arthur Sterling? Alara stammered, disbelief warring with a tiny, fragile spark of hope. The CEO, and he wants me for a project. That is correct. Ms. Vance? Margaret confirmed, a hint of steel in her tone that suggested this was not open for debate. He has reviewed your qualifications and believes you possess a unique set of skills and a particular character that aligns with the needs of this undertaking. This position would offer significant financial compensation, commensurate with your experience and the importance of the project, and, should you perform well, a guaranteed, permanent role within Sterling Holdings upon its completion. Significant financial compensation. Guaranteed role. These words were a balm to her weary soul, a lifeline thrown into the turbulent waters of her despair. Lily's face flashed in her mind, then her mother's tired but hopeful eyes. Could this truly be happening? When would I start? What would the project entail? Alara asked, her voice trembling slightly with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Mr. Sterling requires your presence for an initial briefing tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp, at his private penthouse office on the top floor of the Sterling Tower. Margaret replied, the instructions precise. The project details are highly confidential and will be disclosed only by Mr. Sterling himself. Your official appointment, title, and remuneration will be formalized then. A car will be dispatched to your residence at 8:30 a.m. A car. Disbelief threatened to overwhelm her. This was not how things worked for people like her. This was the stuff of movies, of improbable dreams. Ms. Vance? Margaret's voice cut through her daze. Are you available? Alara took a deep breath, pushing aside the lingering doubts. This was a chance, perhaps her only chance, to pull her family out of the abyss. Whether it was a strange twist of fate or some unknown benevolent force, she had to seize it. Yes, Alara said, her voice firmer now, filled with a newfound resolve. Yes, I'm available. I'll be there. Excellent, Margaret said, and Alara could almost hear a faint, approving smile in her voice. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Miss Vance, please ensure you are ready. The line clicked, leaving Alara in stunned silence, the phone still pressed to her ear. She stared at the empty screen, the unfamiliar number gone. Had that really just happened? Was this real? The skepticism that was her constant companion warred with a desperate, burgeoning hope. She thought of the old man she had helped, the CEO's grandfather. Could there possibly be a connection? The thought was fleeting, almost absurd. Still, a warmth spread through her chest, a feeling she hadn't experienced in a very long time, the fragile bloom of possibility. She clutched the phone to her chest, a silent prayer forming on her lips. Tomorrow, everything could change. The morning dawned crisp and clear, but for Alara, it was a blur of nervous anticipation. She had barely slept, her mind reeling with the implications of Margaret Chen's call. She carefully chose her outfit, the least faded of her blouses, a simple skirt, and her well-worn but polished shoes. Every stitch felt like a fragile shield against the imposing world she was about to re-enter. Maria, her mother, had insisted on making her a special breakfast, a gesture of quiet support that almost brought tears to Alara's eyes. Lily, sensing the unusual tension and excitement, simply clung to her, a silent promise of hope. Precisely at 8:30 a.m., a sleek black limousine glided to a stop outside their modest apartment building. Its polished surface reflected the grim concrete like a distorted mirror, a stark symbol of the chasm between their world and the one Alara was about to step into. Neighbors peered from windows, their faces a mix of curiosity and envy. Alara felt a blush creep up her neck, but she squared her shoulders. This wasn't for show. It was for Lily. An impeccably dressed chauffeur, his uniform crisp and uncreased, stepped out and opened the rear door with a respectful nod. Ms. Vance, Mr. Sterling is expecting you. Alara swallowed hard, clutching her worn handbag. Thank you, she managed, sliding onto the plush leather seats. The interior was silent, insulated from the city's clamor, a cocoon of luxury she had only ever seen in magazines. She took a deep, steadying breath, trying to calm her racing heart. The drive to Sterling Tower was mercifully short. As the limousine pulled up to the gleaming glass and steel behemoth, Ilara felt a shiver of recognition. This was the same imposing structure she had entered just days ago, only to be dismissed with such casual cruelty. Today, however, felt different. There was no hurried rush, no anxious wait. The chauffeur opened her door, and she stepped out directly onto the polished granite of the grand entrance. The lobby, a cavernous space of marble and muted gold, was bustling. People, dressed in expensive suits and designer dresses, moved with purpose. Ilara felt a familiar prickle of insecurity, her simple attire a glaring contrast to the surrounding opulence. She spotted the reception desk, the same one where she had inquired about her interview and where the receptionist had barely looked up. But before she could approach, a voice, calm and clear, cut through the hum of the lobby. "Ms. Vance, welcome." Ilara turned to see Margaret Chen, Arthur Sterling's personal assistant. Standing a few feet away, Margaret was even more poised and elegant in person than her voice had suggested. She wore a tailored charcoal suit that exuded quiet authority, and her silver hair was pulled back in a neat bun. There was a subtle warmth in her eyes that Ilara hadn't detected over the phone. "Ms. Chen?" Ilara replied, a wave of relief washing over her. "Thank you for sending the car. It's Mr. Sterling's standard practice for his personal guests," Margaret said with a polite smile, indicating the private elevator bank, distinct from the employee and public elevators. "Please, this way." "Ms. Vance, my name is Margaret Chen. I am the personal assistant to Mr. Arthur Sterling, the CEO of Sterling Holdings." As they walked, Ilara's eyes scanned the lobby, and then she saw them. Ilara adjusted the collar of her worn, yet meticulously ironed, blouse, the fabric thin against her skin. Her resume, clutched in her damp hand, felt like a fragile lifeline. It was impressive, a testament to her sharp mind and relentless drive, but it couldn't speak to the desperation that gnawed at her. Her younger sister, Lily, lay in a hospital bed, her small body battling a rare autoimmune disease. The medical bills piled up like an insurmountable mountain, dwarfing the meager earnings from Ilara's part-time jobs. And then there was her mother, wilting slowly under the stress, her once vibrant spirit dimmed by worry. Sterling Holdings wasn't just a job. It was a sanctuary, a lifeline for her family. Evelyn Thorne, the HR manager, stood near a group of executives by the coffee bar, her severe face animated in conversation. Her sharp, perfectly coiffed blonde hair caught the morning light. And beside her, laughing perhaps a little too loudly at one of Evelyn's remarks, was Brandon Hayes. His arrogant smirk was instantly recognizable. She navigated the crowded sidewalks, a blur of faces rushing past, each engrossed in their own urban ballet. Her eyes, usually quick and observant, were fixed forward, her mind replaying interview scenarios, rehearsing answers, trying to conjure a confidence she didn't quite feel. The city's cacophony faded into a distant hum, replaced by the frantic beat of her own heart. Ilara's steps faltered for a fraction of a second. A cold wave of fear and indignation washed over her. They hadn't seen her. Not yet. The thought of facing them, of their knowing she was here, filled her with dread. What if this was a mistake? What if Arthur Sterling had simply made a grand gesture to humble them, and she was merely a pawn in his game? Suddenly, a sharp cry sliced through the din. A blur of bright yellow and frantic pedaling, a delivery cyclist, weaving recklessly through the pedestrian traffic, swerved violently. A frail, elderly man, laden with what looked like a bag of groceries, was directly in his path. There was a sickening thud, a clatter of spilled produce, and the old man stumbled, then collapsed onto the grimy pavement. Margaret, ever observant, noticed Ilara's slight hesitation. Her gaze followed Ilara's, landing briefly on Evelyn and Brandon, a subtle, almost imperceptible hardening in her eyes. There are many individuals in this building. "Ms. Vance," Margaret said, her voice dropping to a low, firm tone. "Some are here to build, others to obstruct. Remember your purpose here. Mr. Sterling values integrity and genuine effort above all else." A collective intake of breath rippled through the crowd, followed by an immediate, almost chilling, silence. But it was only for a moment. Just as quickly, the human tide began to flow around the scene, a river of indifference parting to bypass the fallen figure, the cyclist, without a glance back. pedaled furiously away, disappearing into the labyrinth of streets. People averted their gazes, muttering about being late, about it not being their problem, their faces etched with a peculiar mix of discomfort and haste. No one stopped. Not one. The words were a quiet reassurance, a subtle nudge that helped Alara regain her composure. She took a deep breath, pushing down the surge of anxiety. Margaret was right. Her purpose was Lily, her family. She wasn't here to impress Evelyn Thorne or Brandon Hayes. She was here for Arthur Sterling. Alara froze. Her precious interview time was ticking away, a relentless countdown in her mind. Every fiber of her being screamed at her to keep going, to ignore the scene, to prioritize her family's future. Yet, the image of the old man, his sparse white hair disheveled, his hand trembling as he tried to push himself up, seared into her conscience. He looked so vulnerable, so utterly alone amidst the bustling, uncaring city. As they approached the private elevators, Margaret pressed a button, and the brushed steel doors glided open silently. Just as Alara stepped inside, she risked one last glance back. Evelyn Thorne's eyes, cold and calculating, met hers across the vast expanse of the lobby. Evelyn's smile vanished, replaced by a flicker of confusion, then annoyance, as she recognized the charity case from the failed interview. Brandon Hayes, oblivious, continued to chuckle at whatever Evelyn had just said. A wave of empathy, raw and undeniable, washed over her. She knew what it felt like to be forgotten, to be overlooked, to be just another struggling face in a sea of plenty. Her resolve hardened, not with ambition, but with a quiet, fierce humanity. Her interview could wait. Some things were simply more important. Without a second thought, Alara broke free from the human current, dropping her bag carelessly on the ground beside her, and rushed towards the fallen man. Alara knelt beside the old man, her heart thumping with a mixture of urgency and genuine concern. His eyes, surprisingly clear and sharp despite the fall, blinked up at her from a face etched with countless wrinkles. He was dressed in a worn tweed coat and a faded scarf, his leather shoes scuffed, cementing Alara's initial assumption that he was simply another forgotten soul navigating the city's harsh realities. The elevator doors closed, cutting off Evelyn's gaze. Alara leaned back against the cool metal, her heart still pounding, but a new sensation stirring within her, a faint, exhilarating tremor of defiance. She was no longer just the desperate girl seeking a job. She was here, in the heart of Sterling Holdings, by invitation of its most powerful man. And for the first time in a long time, the scales of justice felt like they might just be tipping in her favor. The ascent in the private elevator was swift and silent, each floor a testament to the immense power and wealth contained within Sterling Tower. Alara watched the numbers climb, her reflection shimmering in the polished steel doors, a ghostly image of the nervous girl from the city's struggling districts. The defiance she had felt in the lobby solidified into a quiet determination. She was here, and she would seize this chance. "Are you all right, sir?" she asked, her voice soft but firm, cutting through the lingering silence left by the indifferent crowd. She gently checked his arms and legs, looking for any obvious injuries. He winced slightly as she touched his left wrist, but quickly waved her off with a faint smile. The doors parted on the top floor, revealing an antechamber as grand as the lobby, but infinitely more serene. Soft, indirect lighting bathed priceless artwork and sleek, modern furniture. Margaret Chen led her through this elegant space into an expansive office that seemed to float above the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking panoramic view, the urban sprawl stretching endlessly beneath a sky painted in soft morning blues. "Just a bit of a tumble, my dear," he rasped, his voice surprisingly robust for his age. "More pride than bone, I assure you. Clumsy old fool, that's me." And then she saw him. Alara offered a small, reassuring smile. "It wasn't your fault, sir." The cyclist was very reckless. She helped him carefully sit upright, supporting his back as he leaned against the cold concrete wall. His breath was a little shaky, but he seemed otherwise unharmed. Scattered around them were the remnants of his grocery shopping, a bruised apple, a few crushed carrots, and a carton of milk that had burst open, creating a small, milky puddle on the sidewalk. Seated behind a vast, dark wood desk, silhouetted against the glittering cityscape, was Arthur Sterling. He was older than she had imagined, his silver hair a distinguished halo around a face etched with the lines of experience and authority. He rose as they entered, his movements fluid despite his age, and extended a hand, a warm, genuine smile gracing his lips. "Oh dear," the old man sighed, his gaze falling on the ruined groceries. "Looks like my grand feast will have to wait." A flicker of something in his eyes, not sadness, but a peculiar mix of amusement and resignation, caught Alara's attention. There was a quiet dignity about him, even in this vulnerable state, that belied his unassuming appearance. Vance," he said, his voice deep and resonant, a familiar warmth in its tone. "Welcome. Please, have a seat." Despite the growing anxiety about her interview, Alara knew she couldn't leave him like this. "Don't worry, sir. Let's get these gathered up." She started collecting the scattered items, carefully picking up the unbroken ones. The old man watched her, a thoughtful expression on his face. Ilara's hand trembled slightly as she took his grip surprisingly firm. "Mr. Sterling, thank you for seeing me. I'm still a little surprised." "You're in a hurry, aren't you?" he observed, his voice lower now, almost a murmur. "I saw you rushing before my unplanned descent." "I imagine you are," he chuckled, a sound that stirred a faint, distant memory in her mind. He gestured to one of the plush leather chairs opposite his desk. Margaret settled discreetly into a chair in the corner, a silent sentinel. Ilara paused, a wry smile touching her lips. "A bit, yes. I have a very important interview. My future and my family's might just depend on it." She hesitated, then added, "At Sterling Holdings." Actually, Ilara sat, trying to compose herself. She felt a strange sense of déjà vu, a nagging feeling that she had heard that voice, seen that smile before. But where her mind raced, sifting through the chaotic memories of the past few days, a brief, almost imperceptible spark lit up in the old man's eyes, a flicker of something she couldn't quite decipher. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by his calm, kindly gaze. "Sterling Holdings. You say, a formidable institution? What position are you applying for?" Arthur Sterling leaned forward, his gaze direct and piercing, yet undeniably kind. "Ms. Vance, I believe we've met before." "A junior analyst," Ilara replied, carefully placing the bruised apple into his now empty grocery bag. "It's a step up from anything I've ever done, but I've worked so hard for this." Ilara frowned, confused. I don't think so. "Mr. Sterling, this is my first time meeting you." "Hard work and kindness," the old man mused, his gaze fixed on her. "A rare combination these days, especially in the corporate world." He slowly, carefully, began to pick up a few items near his feet, his movements slow. A knowing twinkle entered his eyes. "Are you quite sure?" he pressed gently. "Think back to the morning of your interview. The chaos outside, the traffic, the incident with an old man." "Please, let me," Ilara insisted, taking the bag from him. "You just focus on getting your breath back." She packed the remaining salvageable items, then helped him slowly to his feet. He leaned heavily on her arm, his frailness more apparent now that he was standing. His words struck her like a bolt of lightning. The street, the fall, the pain, the frantic worry about the interview. Her eyes widened, a gasp catching in her throat. Her gaze swept over his face, now closer, more clearly visible in the soft office light. The faint scar above his left eyebrow, the deep-set eyes, the benevolent yet discerning expression. It was him, the old man, the man she had helped up from the pavement, the man whose interview had been tragically disrupted, the man for whom she had sacrificed her own critical time. "My name is Arthur," the old man said, looking at her with a gentle smile. "And I truly appreciate your assistance. Young lady, most people would have simply walked on by." You're him," Ilara whispered, utterly stunned. "The man. From the street." "Ilara," she responded, a warmth spreading through her despite her racing thoughts about the interview. "It was nothing." "Arthur, are you sure you're not hurt? Can I help you get somewhere, perhaps to a clinic?" Arthur Sterling smiled, a genuine, heartwarming smile that reached his eyes. "Indeed, Ms. Vance, and you, in your selfless act of kindness, saved me from far more than just a bruised ego. You saved me from potentially a broken hip, and certainly from a very bad start to my day." He paused, his expression growing serious. "More importantly, you showed me a depth of character, a compassion, and a strength of spirit that few possess in this cynical world." Arthur shook his head. No, I'll be quite all right. Just need a moment to collect myself. Is there a bench nearby?" Ilara felt a rush of emotions. Shock, disbelief, a profound sense of vindication, and a sudden, overwhelming wave of relief. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't a mistake. This was a consequence, a direct result of her small act of humanity. Ilara scanned the street. Yes, just down there, by the park entrance. She continued to support him, her arm wrapped around his slight frame, guiding him slowly, carefully, through the thinning crowd. Each step was a battle against the clock. Yet Ilara felt an odd sense of peace. Helping someone, truly helping, was a rare luxury in her life of constant striving, and it felt right. They finally reached a quiet bench beneath a sprawling oak tree. I had no idea," she stammered, still reeling. You needed help. Anyone would have done the same." As Arthur settled onto the bench, he turned to Ilara, his eyes twinkling. "You have a good heart, Ilara. Don't ever let the world take that from you. It's far more valuable than any corporate title." He extended a slightly trembling hand, and Ilara shook it gently. His grip was surprisingly firm. "Perhaps," Arthur said, his gaze unwavering, "but not everyone does the same. Ilara, many people walked past that day. Many people were too busy, too self-absorbed, or simply didn't care. You did. You prioritized a stranger's well-being over your own urgent professional appointment. That, Ilara, is the mark of true leadership. That is the kind of integrity I value above all else." "Thank you, Arthur," Ilara said, a genuine smile gracing her lips. She glanced at her watch and gasped. She was terribly late. "I really must go now. But please, take care." He leaned back, his voice taking on a more formal, yet still deeply personal, tone. "When Margaret informed me of your interview and your subsequent rejection, I was dismayed, and frankly, quite angry. It became abundantly clear that some individuals within my HR department have lost sight of what truly matters in an employee, focusing solely on superficial metrics and adherence to rigid, outdated procedures." His eyes flickered towards Margaret, who remained impassive, betraying no emotion. "Oh, I will," Arthur promised, a knowing glint in his eyes. "And Ilara, good luck with your interview. You'll do splendidly. I'm sure of it." "That's why I intervened," Arthur continued. "I needed to know more about the young woman who stopped. And what I found, Ilara, was truly remarkable. Your academic record, your work ethic, your unwavering dedication to your family in the face of immense personal hardship, it paints a picture of extraordinary resilience. You are precisely the kind of person Sterling Holdings needs, not just for your intellect, but for your heart." The humid morning air of the city clung to Ilara Vance like a second skin, heavy with the exhaust of 1,000 forgotten dreams. Each breath was a reminder of the weight on her shoulders, a burden that had grown impossibly heavy over the past few years. Today, however, wasn't just another day of struggle. It was the day. Her interview at Sterling Holdings, a titan of industry whose gleaming skyscraper pierced the clouds like a monument to ambition, was her last, best hope. Ilara felt tears welling in her eyes, tears of gratitude and overwhelming relief. For so long, she had felt unseen, undervalued, her struggles dismissed. Now, the most powerful man in the city was not only acknowledging them but praising her for the very qualities she thought had been her downfall. With a final, hurried nod, Ilara turned and sprinted towards the Sterling Holdings skyscraper, leaving the old man on the bench, his tattered coat a stark contrast to the gleaming glass and steel around him. She had no idea that the Arthur she had just helped was Arthur Sterling, the reclusive and immensely powerful patriarch of Sterling Holdings, and that their brief encounter had just set in motion a chain of events that would change her life forever. Ilara burst into the gleaming, expansive lobby of Sterling Holdings, her chest heaving, her hair slightly disheveled from the sprint. The polished marble floors and towering glass walls reflected her frantic image, making her feel small and out of place. She glanced at the enormous clock above the reception desk. 15 minutes late. Her heart sank, a heavy stone in her stomach. "So," Arthur said, his voice softening, "let's talk about this special project. It is not an entry-level position. Elera, it is a critical, highly confidential undertaking. Sterling Holdings, like any large corporation, is complex. There are areas where I suspect irregularities, hidden inefficiencies, perhaps even deliberate malfeasance, that are costing the company, and more importantly, compromising its integrity. I need a fresh pair of eyes, someone sharp, intuitive, and absolutely incorruptible to conduct a deep, forensic audit of specific departments and practices." "Alara Vance, for a 10 a.m. interview," she gasped to the impeccably dressed receptionist, trying to compose herself, her voice still a little breathless. He picked up a thick folder from his desk, its cover bearing no labels. "This project will require immense dedication, discretion, and a keen analytical mind. You will report directly to me, and you will have full access to any data you require. Your task will be to uncover the truth, whatever it may be, and if you succeed, not only will Sterling Holdings be stronger for it, but your future here will be secured permanently." The receptionist, with a perfectly arched eyebrow and an air of polite disdain, merely nodded. "They've been expecting you. Take the express lift to the 30th floor. HR department. They're not keen on tardiness here." The weight of his words settled on Alara. This was not just a job offer, it was a mission, a chance to use her skills for a purpose far greater than she could have imagined. And with it came the promise of a future for Lily, a future free from the shadow of illness and poverty. The ride-up felt interminable, each rising floor a judgment. She smoothed her blouse, took a few shaky breaths, and tried to summon the confidence she had carefully constructed for this moment. This was it. No matter what, she had to make this count. The financial compensation for this project will begin at a salary of $150,000 annually, with a substantial bonus upon successful completion, Arthur stated, his voice firm. "And all medical expenses for your sister, Lily, will be covered by a special Sterling Foundation fund, effective immediately. Consider it a preliminary show of good faith." When the lift doors opened, she was met by Ms. Evelyn Thorne, the HR manager, a woman whose crisp, tailored suit seemed to be an extension of her unyielding demeanor. Her short, severe bob framed a face that seemed perpetually set in a disapproving frown. Beside her stood Mr. Brandon Hayes, a junior executive, younger than Evelyn, with slicked back hair and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, a predatory glint hidden beneath a veneer of charm. Alara gasped, tears finally spilling over. $150,000 and Lily's medical bills. It was an unimaginable sum, a freedom she had only dreamed of. It was everything. "Miss Vance, you're late," Evelyn stated, her voice as sharp as a newly honed blade, not a hint of warmth. "Our time is valuable." Arthur watched her, his expression empathetic. "Do you accept this challenge, Alara Vance?" Alara's cheeks flushed. "I apologize profusely, Ms. Thorne. There was an incident on the street. An elderly gentleman was knocked down by a cyclist. I had to stop and assist him. It was unavoidable." She wiped her tears, looking him squarely in the eye. The fear was gone, replaced by a surge of renewed strength. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about justice, about proving that integrity could truly win. Evelyn's lips thinned into an even harder line. "An unavoidable delay or an excuse, Ms. Vance. Punctuality is paramount in this company. It speaks volumes about one's commitment." Brandon merely smirked, a patronizing flicker in his eyes. "Yes, Mr. Sterling," Alara said, her voice clear and steady, filled with newfound resolve. "I accept, and I won't let you down." Despite the dismissive tone, Alara tried to remain calm. "It was genuine, I assure you. I couldn't just leave him there." Arthur Sterling nodded slowly, a profound sense of satisfaction settling over his features. The game had begun in earnest, and he had found his most valuable player. The scales of justice were indeed beginning to tilt, and the unsuspecting players who had wronged Alara were about to learn a very painful lesson. The first few days at Sterling Holdings were a whirlwind for Alara. She found herself in a luxurious, yet discreet private office, 2 floors below Arthur Sterling's penthouse. a space that felt both privileged and isolating. Margaret Chen, ever efficient, had ensured everything was set up a high-end computer with specialized software, access credentials for Sterling Holdings' internal network, and a direct, secure line to Mr. Sterling himself. Ilara had never encountered such meticulous preparation, nor such an implicit trust. "Right," Evelyn said, clearly unconvinced. "Let's proceed." Her initial task was to familiarize herself with the company's vast organizational structure, its various departments, and their intricate interdependencies. She pored over annual reports, financial statements, and operational manuals, absorbing information like a sponge. The scale of Sterling Holdings was staggering. It was a multinational conglomerate with interests ranging from technology and finance to real estate and consumer goods. Understanding its labyrinthine operations felt like learning a new language. The interview began, or rather, it was performed. Evelyn's questions were clipped, her gaze piercing, as if trying to find flaws. Brandon, while outwardly more relaxed, interjected with questions designed to trip her up, disguised as casual inquiries. Ilara, despite the oppressive atmosphere, answered with clarity and passion. She spoke of her dedication, her analytical skills honed through self-study and a relentless pursuit of knowledge, her meticulous attention to detail. She emphasized her desire to contribute, to learn, to make a real difference. Arthur Sterling, true to his word, had granted her unprecedented access. She could request any document, any data, and bypass normal departmental hierarchies. This level of authority, usually reserved for top-tier executives, made her an enigma to many. Margaret Chen was her only direct liaison, acting as a buffer and facilitator, discreetly arranging meetings and access permissions, but it was clear their minds were already made up. Every one of her answers seemed to be met with a silent, dismissive nod or an imperceptible shake of the head. Her impressive academic achievements, her volunteer work, her demonstrable problem-solving abilities, they seemed to pass through Evelyn and Brandon like water through a sieve. They barely looked at her resume, instead casting quick, critical glances at her slightly faded attire. Ilara started with the HR department, a place that still sent a chill down her spine. Mr. Sterling had specifically mentioned irregularities and outdated procedures. Her analysis began by examining recruitment metrics, employee turnover rates, and promotion pathways. The data was overwhelming, a sea of numbers and names, but Ilara thrived on it. Her analytical mind, honed by years of academic rigor, found patterns where others saw chaos. What she quickly uncovered was a subtle but pervasive bias. While not overtly discriminatory, the HR department's hiring algorithms and interview processes seemed to favor candidates from specific, elite universities or those with established connections. Candidates like her, from less prestigious backgrounds but with strong academic records and real-world resilience, were consistently filtered out or pushed to the bottom of the pile. Evelyn Thorne's influence was undeniable in the rigid adherence to these metrics, which, while seemingly objective, subtly reinforced a narrow and exclusionary talent pool. Her focus then shifted to the finance department, a far more complex beast. Mr. Sterling had hinted at potential malfeasance. Ilara, equipped with secure access, began diving into transaction logs, departmental budgets, and vendor contracts. This was where her true challenge lay. Unlike the relatively straightforward HR data, financial irregularities could be buried deep, disguised by layers of legitimate transactions. She worked tirelessly, often late into the night, fueled by strong coffee and an unwavering determination. Lily's improving health was a constant motivator. The sight of her sister, slowly regaining her color and energy, was all the validation Ilara needed. The Sterling Foundation's fund had already covered several crucial treatments, alleviating a burden Ilara had carried for years. During one late-night session, as she was cross-referencing a series of large expenditures in the procurement department against project budgets, she noticed a recurring pattern. Several high-value contracts for materials and services were consistently awarded to a relatively obscure vendor, Phoenix Solutions. Despite their bids often being higher than competitors, what was even stranger was that Phoenix Solutions seemed to pop up across different departments, IT, R&D, even marketing, for services that were wildly disparate. A red flag immediately went up. It was unusual for one vendor to have such a broad, unspecialized portfolio, and consistently win contracts with higher bids. She dug deeper, trying to find Phoenix Solutions' registration details, their corporate history, their ownership. It was surprisingly difficult. Their online presence was minimal. Their listed address, a virtual office. Alara reported her initial findings to Arthur Sterling via a secure encrypted email. He responded almost immediately, praising her diligence and encouraging her to pursue this lead. "Trust your instincts, Alara," he wrote. "If something feels off, it usually is." Encouraged, Alara spent the next few days meticulously tracking every payment made to Phoenix Solutions. The total sum was staggering, reaching into the tens of millions over the past 3 years. She also noticed that the approvals for these contracts often bore the signatures of two specific senior executives, Marcus Thorne, Evelyn Thorne's older brother and a powerful figure in the procurement department, and Richard Vance, the head of the IT department. No relation to Alara, but a name she would soon come to associate with treachery. The connection to Evelyn Thorne through her brother was not lost on Alara. A chill ran down her spine. Was this a family operation? The thought was unsettling, hinting at a deeper web of corruption than she had initially imagined. One afternoon, as she was analyzing the payment approvals for a particularly exorbitant IT contract with Phoenix Solutions, she noticed a subtle discrepancy in the digital signature of Richard Vance. It wasn't quite right. It was too perfect, too uniform across multiple documents, almost as if it had been digitally stamped rather than individually signed. She cross-referenced it with other, more routine documents signed by Vance, and the subtle variations that would normally occur in a human signature were missing. A jolt of adrenaline surged through her. This wasn't just inefficiency, this was fraud. She had found her first solid piece of evidence. The irregularities Mr. Sterling suspected were far more sinister than he had probably imagined. She had pulled on a thread, and it was leading her into a tangled knot of deception, betrayal, and a massive embezzlement scheme hidden in plain sight. Alara knew she was on the right track, but a new, chilling realization dawned on her the closer she got to the truth, the more dangerous her mission would become. She was no longer just an analyst, she was an investigator, a threat to powerful people who had grown comfortable in their illicit gains. The game had truly begun, and she was playing for far higher stakes than just her own future. The revelation of the falsified digital signature sent a shiver down Alara's spine, but it also ignited a fiery resolve. This wasn't just suspicion, it was concrete evidence. She spent the next few days meticulously compiling her findings, cross-referencing every suspicious transaction with Phoenix Solutions, gathering all the data related to Marcus Thorne and Richard Vance, and creating a comprehensive report that left no room for doubt. The intricate web of deceit, once hidden, now lay exposed, a stark testament to their brazen corruption. When the report was complete, a thick binder filled with damning evidence and detailed analyses, Alara requested a meeting with Arthur Sterling. Margaret Chen swiftly arranged it, her usual composed demeanor hinting at an underlying anticipation. The meeting took place in Arthur's penthouse office. The city stretched out beneath them, indifferent to the corporate drama unfolding within Sterling Tower. Arthur Sterling sat across from Alara, his expression one of calm expectation. He had aged gracefully, but Alara noticed a sharper glint in his eyes, a steely determination that mirrored her own. "You have something for me, Alara?" he asked, his voice low. Alara placed the binder on his desk. "Mr. Sterling, I believe I have uncovered significant financial malfeasance within Sterling Holdings. Deeply rooted in the procurement and IT departments." She opened the binder, her voice clear and concise as she began her presentation. She laid out the pattern of inflated contracts awarded to Phoenix Solutions, detailing the inconsistencies in their business profile and their elusive digital footprint. She presented the hard evidence of Richard Vance's digitally forged signatures, demonstrating how they differed from his genuine ones. "Phoenix Solutions," Alara explained, pointing to a graph showing the escalating payments, "appears to be a shell company. Its services are vague, its costs consistently inflated, and its ownership structure is deliberately opaque. All signs point to it being a conduit for siphoning funds out of Sterling Holdings." Arthur listened intently, his gaze unwavering, occasionally nodding. His jaw tightened when Alara revealed the connection to Marcus Thorne, Evelyn Thorne's brother. "And the digital signatures," he prompted, after cross-referencing numerous documents. I've concluded that Richard Vance's digital signatures on key Phoenix Solutions contracts were not authentic, Alara stated, presenting side-by-side comparisons. They were generated or replicated, likely to bypass scrutiny. This indicates direct, intentional fraud. A heavy silence descended upon the office. Arthur Sterling picked up the binder, his fingers tracing the graphs and figures. The city lights outside seemed to dim in comparison to the gravity of the moment. So, Marcus Thorne and Richard Vance, Arthur finally said, his voice devoid of emotion, have been systematically embezzling tens of millions from Sterling Holdings using a phantom company, right under our noses. That is my conclusion, sir, Alara confirmed. The scale and duration of the scheme suggest a highly coordinated operation. Arthur leaned back in his chair, a deep sigh escaping him. I knew there were cracks, Alara, but I hadn't imagined such brazen betrayal. He looked at her, a flicker of admiration in his eyes. You have done an extraordinary job. This is precisely what I needed. What will happen now? Mr. Sterling, Alara asked, her heart pounding. She had done her part. Now it was in his hands. Justice, Alara, Arthur replied, his voice firm, tinged with a cold fury. Swift and unequivocal justice. The very next morning, the corporate world of Sterling Holdings was rocked by a seismic event. Arthur Sterling, rarely seen in such an executive capacity, personally convened an emergency board meeting. Alara, at Arthur's insistence, was present, though discreetly seated behind him. The atmosphere in the boardroom was tense, a palpable sense of unease hanging in the air. Evelyn Thorne sat rigid, her face a mask of carefully controlled composure, though a nervous tick near her eye betrayed her. Marcus Thorne, oblivious or perhaps overly confident, chatted casually with a colleague. Richard Vance looked pale, his usual bluster absent. Arthur Sterling began with a calm, almost unnerving composure. Gentlemen, Ms. Thorne, I have called this emergency meeting to address a grave matter concerning the financial integrity of Sterling Holdings. He then gestured to Alara. Ms. Vance, who has been conducting a confidential audit under my direct supervision, will present her findings. Alara stepped forward, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. She was met with a mix of curiosity, disdain, and outright hostility from some of the board members, who still viewed her as the charity case or an unqualified upstart. But she ignored them, her gaze steady, her voice unwavering. She represented her findings, this time with a projected slideshow displaying the incriminating data in stark detail. The Phoenix Solutions contracts, the inflated bids, the untraceable digital footprint, and finally, the irrefutable evidence of Richard Vance's forged signatures. The room grew silent, save for the hum of the projector, as Alara presented the definitive proof, detailing the millions embezzled. Marcus Thorne's face went from pale to ashen. Richard Vance, who had been fidgeting, suddenly slumped in his chair, sweat beading on his forehead. Evelyn Thorne's meticulously constructed facade began to crack, her eyes darting nervously between her brother and Alara. When Alara finished, Arthur Sterling rose. His voice, once calm, now boomed with authority, filling the silent room. Marcus Thorne, Richard Vance, the evidence presented by Ms. Vance is conclusive. You have betrayed the trust of this company, its shareholders, and its employees for your personal gain. This is not just a breach of contract, it is criminal fraud. Marcus Thorne finally found his voice, a desperate attempt at denial. This is preposterous, baseless accusations. This girl is inexperienced. She doesn't understand the complexities of silence. Arthur's voice cut him off, sharp as a whip. The evidence speaks for itself, and I assure you, Ms. Vance's analysis is more thorough and accurate than any audit conducted by those compromised by their own greed. His gaze then shifted to Evelyn. Evelyn, your brother's actions, and your own role in perpetuating a culture of exclusion and bias in HR that allowed such individuals to thrive, will be thoroughly investigated. Your employment with Sterling Holdings is terminated. Effective immediately. Evelyn Thorne gasped, her face draining of all color. What you can't. I've been with the company for 20 years. Integrity is not measured by tenure. Ms. Thorne, Arthur stated coldly, it is measured by character. And yours, like your brother's, has been found severely lacking. Security personnel, who had been discreetly waiting outside, entered the room. Marcus Thorne and Richard Vance were escorted out, their protests and pleas echoing faintly down the corridor. Evelyn Thorne, stunned and humiliated, followed shortly after, her elegant posture crumbling into despair. The remaining board members sat in stunned silence, absorbing the dramatic turn of events. Arthur Sterling looked at them, his gaze firm. Let this be a clear message to all of you. Sterling Holdings will operate with absolute transparency and integrity moving forward. Any further attempts at corruption or sabotage will be met with the full force of the law and this company's resources. He then turned to Alara, a subtle nod of respect passing between them. The aftermath was immediate and far-reaching. News of the high-profile arrests of Marcus Thorne and Richard Vance for embezzlement sent shockwaves through the corporate world. Sterling Holdings initiated a full internal restructuring, with Arthur Sterling taking a more direct role in oversight. Alara Vance, once a nobody, was now a legend within the company, heralded as the integrity officer who had saved Sterling Holdings from a silent, festering corruption. The cleanup would be long and arduous, but the foundation for true justice had been laid. And for Alara, the weight of responsibility was immense, but so was the satisfaction. She had not only secured her family's future, but had also played a pivotal role in unmasking the shadows that had lurked within the heart of a corporate empire. The aftermath of the Thorne-Vance scandal reverberated through Sterling Holdings for weeks. The arrests had sent shockwaves, but Arthur Sterling's decisive action in swiftly addressing the corruption had also instilled a renewed sense of confidence, and a clear message integrity would no longer be compromised. In the wake of the upheaval, Alara Vance, once an unknown, found herself propelled into the spotlight, albeit a corporate one. Arthur Sterling wasted no time in formalizing her position. Within a month, Alara was officially appointed as the Director of Corporate Integrity, a newly created role reporting directly to the CEO. Her office was relocated to a spacious corner suite on the same executive floor as Arthur, a clear signal of her newfound status and critical importance. The title itself was a testament to her actions, solidifying her reputation as the unyielding force that had purged the company of its rot. Her responsibilities were extensive, ranging from developing new compliance protocols and overseeing internal audits to fostering a culture of ethical conduct throughout the vast organization. The cleanup of the embezzlement scheme continued with relentless efficiency. Alara, leveraging her deep understanding of the uncovered fraud, played a key advisory role in the ongoing investigations and the restructuring of the procurement and IT departments. New leaders were brought in, and stringent measures were implemented to prevent similar abuses from ever occurring again. But rising stardom, especially when achieved through exposing powerful figures, rarely comes without its share of challenges. Alara, despite her official authority and Arthur Sterling's unwavering support, faced subtle but persistent resistance from existing executives. Many of them had been with Sterling Holdings for decades, part of the old guard, and some had been allies or beneficiaries of the Thorne network. However, indirectly, they resented her rapid ascent, her youth, and the implied critique her position represented. Meetings became arenas of veiled hostility. Her suggestions for new protocols were met with polite skepticism or deliberate foot-dragging. Whispers followed her in the hallways. Arthur's pet project? Too young, too naive. Doesn't understand how things really work. Evelyn Thorne's former cronies, though powerless to openly challenge Arthur Sterling, still clung to their influence, spreading disinformation and attempting to undermine Alara's credibility through passive aggression and bureaucratic roadblocks. One afternoon, during a strategy session on new vendor vetting procedures, a senior manager, Harold Jenkins, openly questioned her expertise. Ms. Vance, with all due respect, while your recent findings were significant, perhaps you lack the practical experience to dictate procurement policy for a company of our scale. There are nuances, long-standing relationships. Alara met his gaze evenly. Mr. Jenkins, the nuances and long-standing relationships you refer to were precisely what allowed tens of millions of dollars to be siphoned from this company. My lack of experience allowed me to see the obvious corruption that decades of practical experience apparently missed. My directives are based on data and the CEO's mandate for transparency. Are you suggesting we continue with the old ways? Her quiet authority, combined with the unassailable truth of her statement, silenced him. Arthur Sterling, ever perceptive, recognized these undercurrents. He knew Alara needed to prove herself beyond just audit and compliance. He needed her to command respect not just through authority, but through demonstrable strategic brilliance. One day, he summoned her to his office. "Alara," he began, looking out over the city. "The internal cleanup is progressing, thanks to your tireless work. But Sterling Holdings faces an external challenge now. The scandal, while handled decisively, has left a stain on our public image. We need to rebuild trust, not just internally, but with our clients, our partners, and the public." He turned, his eyes piercing. "I have a new project for you, one that goes beyond numbers and audits. It's a strategic initiative, a comprehensive public relations campaign to redefine Sterling Holdings' brand, emphasizing integrity, ethical innovation, and community engagement. You will lead this. You will be the face of Sterling's new era." Alara was taken aback. This was a massive leap from forensic accounting to public relations and brand strategy, areas she had little formal experience in. "Mr. Sterling, with all due respect, my background is in finance and analytics. This seems..." "Precisely," Arthur interrupted, a knowing smile playing on his lips. "It seems outside your comfort zone, but I've seen your ability to adapt, to learn, and to connect with people on a fundamental level. You possess an innate authenticity that this company desperately needs right now. You rescued Sterling Holdings from internal rot. Now I need you to restore its external reputation. You will have the best PR and marketing teams at your disposal, but the vision, the drive, and the ethical compass will be yours." The challenge was daunting, but Alara felt a familiar thrill. This wasn't just about restoring a corporate image, it was about proving that a company built on genuine principles could thrive, and that her unique journey could inspire real change. It was a chance to shape the future of Sterling Holdings, not just uncover its past. Amidst these professional upheavals, a profound sense of peace had settled over Alara's personal life. Lily's health continued to improve dramatically. The specialized treatments funded by the Sterling Foundation were working miracles. Lily's laughter now filled their small apartment, her energy returning, her eyes sparkling with life. She was attending a school for children with special needs, thriving in an environment that nurtured her unique abilities. The constant fear, the gnawing anxiety about medical bills and Lily's future, had finally dissipated. Watching Lily blossom was Alara's greatest reward, her ultimate motivation. It reinforced every late night, every battle fought, every challenge overcome. She knew that her journey was far from over, but with Arthur Sterling as her unlikely mentor and Lily's unwavering spirit as her guide, Alara Vance was ready for whatever new challenges lay ahead. The subtle resistance from jealous colleagues seemed trivial compared to the profound sense of purpose that now defined her life. She was no longer just surviving, she was thriving, and in doing so, redefining what it meant to be powerful. Alara Vance embraced her new role as Director of Corporate Integrity, with the same fierce determination that had guided her through every challenge. Leading the Public Relations and Brand Strategy Initiative was a stark departure from the familiar world of financial audits, but she viewed it as another puzzle to solve, another opportunity to bring transparency and authenticity to a corporate giant. Her first hurdle was the existing marketing and public relations team. They were a seasoned, if somewhat rigid group, accustomed to traditional, often defensive, PR tactics. When Alara, with her background in finance and a history of exposing internal fraud, walked in to lead them, she was met with polite, yet palpable, skepticism. Their expressions clearly conveyed, "What does she know about brand messaging?" At their first major strategy meeting, Alara laid out her vision. "Sterling Holdings doesn't need a polished veneer. It needs a real transformation. We're not just selling products or services anymore, we're selling trust. Our campaign must emphasize genuine integrity, ethical innovation, and tangible community engagement. We need to show, not just tell, that we've changed." Her ideas were revolutionary for the conservative corporate culture. She proposed initiatives that went beyond typical advertising, partnering with local charities, sponsoring educational programs in underserved communities, investing in sustainable manufacturing, and launching a transparent digital platform where consumers could track the company's ethical footprint. The marketing director, a smooth-talking veteran named George Davies, initially pushed back. "Ms. Vance, this is highly unconventional. It's costly. and it diverts resources from direct marketing. Our focus has always been on ROI. Alara's gaze was unwavering. And what is the ROI of a ruined reputation? Mr. Davies' trust, once lost, is far more expensive to rebuild than any sustainable initiative. Arthur Sterling has given me full autonomy, and we will move forward with this new approach. I expect your expertise in execution, not in questioning the core strategy. Her quiet authority, backed by Arthur Sterling's explicit support, left little room for argument. Among the team, one figure stood out: Liam Sterling, Arthur's grandson, a rising star in the company. Liam was the head of digital innovation. He was charismatic, intelligent, and possessed a quiet intensity that hinted at depths beyond his privileged background. His initial perception of Alara had been colored by the rumor mill, a lucky hire, a charity case, someone who had stumbled into power through circumstance. He'd observed her from a distance, curious about the woman who had so profoundly impacted his grandfather. During the initial brainstorming sessions for the digital transparency platform, Liam was reserved, scrutinizing Alara's every move. He expected a brilliant but perhaps socially awkward number cruncher. What he found was a leader who listened, who asked insightful questions, and who articulated a vision with clarity and conviction. Alara, for her part, found Liam to be surprisingly insightful and genuinely committed to the company's future. His contributions to the digital platform's architecture were invaluable, combining technological prowess with a keen understanding of user experience. One evening, working late on a project brief, Alara found herself alone in the executive lounge. Liam entered, a half-eaten sandwich in hand. "Still here, Vance?" he asked, a playful smirk on his lips. "I thought directors had people for this." Alara smiled faintly. "Some directors prefer to understand the fine print, Sterling. Besides, I found the company's previous PR campaigns lacked a certain authenticity." Liam chuckled, sitting opposite her. "Can't argue with that. Evelyn Thorne was a master of polished ambiguity. But your approach? It's different. Daring. Even, I've heard some of the old guard grumbling about radical ideas and untested strategies." "Let them grumble," Alara replied, her eyes sparkling with determination. "Results speak louder than whispers." Liam studied her, a new appreciation dawning. He had seen her intellectual prowess, but now he saw her resilience, her unwavering belief in her convictions. "My grandfather believes in you, he said softly. "He sees something special. He gave me a chance when no one else would." Alara acknowledged, her voice tinged with gratitude. "I won't let him down." As weeks turned into months, the initial skepticism within the PR and marketing teams began to erode, replaced by grudging respect, and in some cases, outright admiration. Alara's strategic campaigns, which focused on genuine stories of Sterling Holdings' transformation and its positive impact on communities, started yielding tangible results. Public surveys showed a marked increase in trust and a more positive perception of the company. News articles highlighted Sterling's new ethical initiatives, praising Arthur Sterling's bold leadership and Alara Vance's innovative vision. The Sterling for Schools program, which provided cutting-edge technology and educational resources to underprivileged schools, became a national success story. The Green Future Initiative, Sterling's commitment to reducing its carbon footprint, garnered industry awards. Alara ensured that every initiative was transparently documented, proving that the company was living up to its new ethical mandate. Liam Sterling became an increasingly significant presence in Alara's professional life. Their late-night work sessions became more frequent, punctuated by easy laughter and a shared passion for making a real impact. He saw past her professional exterior to the compassionate, fiercely loyal woman beneath, a woman who carried the world on her shoulders but never complained. She, in turn, recognized his sharp intellect, his dry wit, and the genuine kindness that lay beneath his somewhat aloof demeanor. Their conversations often drifted beyond work, family, dreams, the injustices of the world. He learned about Lily, about the struggles Alara had faced, and he listened with an empathy that surprised her. Alara found herself opening up, sharing fragments of her past she had never revealed to anyone else. A subtle, unspoken connection began to form between them, a quiet acknowledgement of a shared understanding that transcended their professional relationship. One rainy evening, as they were the last ones in the office, Liam walked Alara to her car. The city lights blurred through the raindrops. "You know," he said, stopping by her door, "it's refreshing to work with someone who isn't afraid to challenge the status quo. You're changing things, Ilara, not just Sterling Holdings, but how people think about corporate responsibility." Ilara looked at him, truly seeing him in that moment, not just Arthur Sterling's grandson, but a man who genuinely cared. "It's a team effort," she said, her voice soft. "Some teams have a better captain," he replied, a gentle smile touching his lips. He hesitated for a moment, then added, "Dinner sometime. Not a work dinner, just dinner." Ilara's heart fluttered. It was a simple question, but the implications were profound. She smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that lit up the dimly lit parking garage. "I'd like that, Liam. Very much." The strategic maneuvers were paying off, both for Sterling Holdings and for Ilara. She was not only rebuilding a corporate reputation, but also forging unexpected alliances and discovering a glimmer of personal connection in the most unlikely of places. The path ahead was still fraught with challenges, but with purpose in her professional life and a burgeoning warmth in her personal one, Ilara Vance was ready to face them all. Ilara's strategic campaigns for Sterling Holdings were undeniably successful. The Sterling for Schools program was lauded as a model for corporate social responsibility, drawing positive media attention and boosting brand loyalty. The Green Future initiative cemented Sterling's reputation as an environmentally conscious leader. Public trust, once eroded by the scandal, was steadily being rebuilt, thanks to Ilara's relentless focus on genuine transparency and community impact. Her vision wasn't just good for public perception, it was proving to be good for business, with early indicators showing increased consumer engagement and even a slight uptick in sales across various divisions. Her professional success was paralleled by a deepening personal connection with Liam Sterling. Their work dinners had quickly morphed into genuine dates, filled with laughter, shared stories, and a mutual understanding that blossomed effortlessly. Liam, with his sharp wit and quiet strength, became a comforting presence, a counterpoint to the relentless demands of her job. He was one of the few people who truly understood the pressures she faced, and he offered not just support, but also invaluable insights from his own experiences within the company. Ilara found herself feeling a sense of peace and belonging she hadn't known since before her life had been upended. Lily, too, adored Liam, who patiently taught her to draw simple shapes and always brought her thoughtful little gifts. The once desolate apartment now felt like a home, filled with warmth and the promise of a future. Despite these triumphs, an insidious undercurrent began to ripple through Sterling Holdings. While many respected Ilara, the old guard, those executives and managers who had thrived under Evelyn Thorne's influence, or who simply resented change, were quietly consolidating their discontent. Their overt resistance had been quelled by Arthur Sterling's iron will, but their resentment festered, turning into a subtle, systematic campaign of sabotage. Initially, the setbacks were minor, easily dismissed as bureaucratic hiccups or typical corporate inefficiency. A crucial report for the Green Future initiative would be delayed due to technical difficulties. An email detailing a significant community event would mysteriously vanish from a mailing list. Funds allocated for a school program would be rerouted to another, less impactful project without her direct approval, later explained as administrative oversight. Ilara, ever the pragmatic problem solver, initially attributed these to the massive restructuring and the natural resistance to change. She worked harder, double-checked everything, and built contingency plans. Liam, too, noted the unusual frequency of these mishaps. "It's almost as if someone is deliberately trying to slow things down," he remarked one evening, reviewing a delayed budget report with her. "Or they're just not used to the new pace of accountability," Ilara had countered, still trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. She wanted to believe in the best in people, a trait that Arthur Sterling both admired and occasionally worried about. However, the frequency and precision of these errors began to escalate, becoming too consistent to be mere coincidence. The missteps always seemed to target high-profile projects Ilara was personally championing, and they always occurred at critical junctures, designed to cause maximum disruption. Ilara's growing unease morphed into a cold suspicion. She felt eyes on her, not just the admiring gazes of her team, but the calculating stares of those who wished for her downfall. The quiet sabotage culminated in a major, public setback. Sterling Holdings had announced a grand charity gala, the Integrity Gala, aimed at raising funds for inner-city educational programs and solidifying their new image. Ilara had personally overseen every detail, ensuring transparency, securing high-profile donors, and arranging for a live broadcast to showcase the company's commitment. Just hours before the gala was set to begin, a critical technical malfunction occurred. The live broadcast system mysteriously crashed, the main screen displaying only static. Simultaneously, a significant number of confirmed high-profile guests received fake cancellation notices, leading to confusion and sparse attendance. The carefully orchestrated event, designed to be a triumph, became a chaotic, embarrassing spectacle. The media, quick to pounce on any corporate misstep, ran headlines like Sterling's integrity crumbles and gala disaster for redeemed conglomerate. The damage to the company's carefully rebuilt reputation was swift and severe. Arthur Sterling was visibly furious, his face etched with a disappointment that cut deeper than any anger. He called Ilara into his office immediately after the gala. "Ilara," he said, his voice quiet but laced with steel. "What happened tonight? This wasn't a malfunction. This was sabotage. And it happened on your watch." Ilara felt a cold dread settle in her stomach. The incident had been a direct assault on her credibility, a public humiliation designed to undermine everything she had built. "I believe so too, Mr. Sterling," she replied, her voice strained. "I had double-checked everything, every system, every guest list. This was precise, targeted, and clearly designed to humiliate the company. And me." Arthur's gaze sharpened. "Do you have any idea who would do this?" Ilara paused, her mind racing. The quiet resistance, the subtle delays, the whispers, it all coalesced into a chilling realization. "I have my suspicions, sir. The old guard. Those who benefited from the previous regime. Those who resent the changes I'm implementing. They want to see me fail. To see Sterling Holdings revert to its old ways." Arthur nodded slowly. "Indeed. They underestimated you once before. They won't make that mistake again. But this time, Ilara, the stakes are higher. Your reputation, and by extension, the company's, is on the line. We need to find who is responsible, and we need to do it quickly and discreetly." Ilara walked out of Arthur's office, the weight of the task pressing down on her. The initial setbacks had been frustrating, but this public humiliation was a direct challenge, a declaration of war. The battle for Sterling Holdings' soul was far from over. The uneasy feeling that had been gnawing at her for weeks now solidified into a chilling certainty. Someone powerful within the company wanted her gone, and they would stop at nothing to achieve it. But Ilara Vance was no longer the desperate girl from the streets. She was a fighter, and she was ready to unmask the new shadows lurking in the gilded halls of Sterling Holdings. The humiliation of the Integrity Gala spurred Ilara into action with a renewed, sharpened resolve. The subtle sabotages had escalated into a full-blown assault on her credibility and the company's integrity. Arthur Sterling's directive was clear: find the culprits, and do it discreetly. This was no longer just about rebuilding a brand, it was about rooting out a cancer. Ilara knew she couldn't tackle this alone. She turned to the one person who had consistently proven his loyalty and insight, Liam Sterling. She met him in a quiet, out-of-the-way coffee shop, far from the watchful eyes of Sterling Holdings. She laid out her suspicions, detailing the pattern of mishaps and the precision of the gala's sabotage. Liam listened intently, his expression grim. "I had a feeling," he admitted, swirling his coffee. "The old guard are like barnacles on a ship. They cling on, resistant to any current that threatens their stagnant existence. But this is calculated." "Precisely," Ilara affirmed, "and it's too sophisticated for just passive resistance. Someone is orchestrating this. Someone with access and influence." Liam's eyes glinted with determination. "Then we find them. My digital innovation team has access to network logs, server activity, communication trails. It's a needle in a haystack. But we can start by looking for unusual activity, unauthorized access, or suspicious data transfers around the times of these incidents." Their collaboration became a clandestine operation. Conducted under the guise of their legitimate work, Ilara, using her Director of Corporate Integrity Access, initiated routine internal audits, subtly shifting her focus to the communication and logistical departments. Liam, meanwhile, deployed his team to meticulously comb through digital footprints. Their late-night work sessions now carried a deeper, more dangerous undertone. The initial findings were subtle but telling. A specific set of IP addresses consistently accessed critical systems outside regular working hours, often initiating unusual file movements or altering schedules just before a glitch occurred. These IPs trace back to a small, obscure subsidiary of Sterling Holdings that dealt with event management and digital broadcasting, the very areas affected by the Gala disaster. As they delved deeper, a name began to surface with disturbing regularity: Richard Vance, the head of this seemingly innocuous subsidiary. Richard Vance, a distant cousin of Evelyn Thorne, and a man whose career had flourished under her patronage. He was known for his quiet efficiency and his fierce loyalty to the old ways, but also for his deep-seated resentment of any perceived outsiders, especially those who disrupted the established order. Ilara remembered him from the initial restructuring, a man who had outwardly complied but inwardly seethed. The evidence mounted. Liam's team uncovered encrypted communications between Richard Vance and several other mid-level executives who had been demoted or sidelined after Ilara's initial investigation. These communications, once decrypted, revealed a chilling plot, a systematic effort to destabilize Ilara's projects, undermine her authority, and ultimately force her out. The Integrity Gala had been their magnum opus, a public spectacle designed to destroy her reputation beyond repair. The night they pieced together the final incriminating evidence, a cold rain lashed against Liam's penthouse windows. The screen before them displayed a damning flowchart of Richard Vance's network, complete with timestamps of malicious actions and digital fingerprints. "It's all here," Liam said, his voice quiet with anger. He orchestrated it all. The fake cancellations, the broadcast system crash, the delayed reports. He even had a small network within IT that could grant him backdoor access. Ilara felt a mix of grim satisfaction and profound disappointment. It was never just about a job for her, it was about integrity, about proving that good could triumph. This betrayal felt personal. "He planned to make it look like my incompetence," she murmured, clenching her fists. "And he almost succeeded," Liam added, reaching out to gently squeeze her hand. "But he underestimated you? And he underestimated us." The next morning, Ilara and Liam presented their findings to Arthur Sterling. They laid out the meticulously gathered evidence, the digital trails, the decrypted communications, the financial irregularities designed to make Ilara's projects appear over budget or inefficient. Arthur, initially listening with a stoic expression, grew visibly enraged as the full scope of the treachery unfolded. His fists clenched as he saw the faces of the executives involved, men he had trusted for years. "Richard Vance," Arthur finally spat, his voice low and dangerous. "I should have known. He always resented change, always believed he was untouchable, and he dared to use my company, my legacy, to settle old scores." His gaze hardened as he looked at Ilara. "You were right. Ilara, this was a direct attack on everything we stand for." The confrontation was swift and brutal. Arthur Sterling, known for his calm demeanor, unleashed a fury rarely seen. Richard Vance and his co-conspirators were called into a private meeting, where Arthur, with Ilara and Liam by his side, presented the irrefutable evidence. There was no denial, only stunned silence as their intricate web of deceit was meticulously unraveled. "You have not only betrayed my trust but actively sought to destroy the very principles we are working to rebuild," Arthur declared, his voice cutting through the tension. "Effective immediately. You are all terminated. Every connection, every benefit, every trace of your presence will be expunged from Sterling Holdings. And I will personally ensure that your actions are reported to the fullest extent of the law." The swift, public dismissal of Richard Vance and his network sent a powerful message throughout Sterling Holdings. It was a clear demonstration that the new era of integrity, championed by Arthur and executed by Ilara, was not to be trifled with. The old guard scattered, their influence shattered, their attempts at sabotage ending in their spectacular downfall. In the aftermath, Ilara felt a profound sense of relief, but also a deeper understanding of the battles ahead. She had navigated the treacherous waters of corporate intrigue, exposed corruption, and weathered personal attacks. And through it all, Liam Sterling had been her unwavering ally. Their bond forged in shared purpose and mutual trust, Their professional alliance had deepened into something more profound, a partnership built on respect, admiration, and a burgeoning love. The path was clear now, not just for Sterling Holdings, but for Alira's future, intertwined with Liam's, full of promise and fortified by the justice she had helped deliver. The dramatic downfall of Richard Vance and his co-conspirators sent shockwaves through Sterling Holdings. It was a clear, unambiguous message. The old era of backroom deals and corporate maneuvering was over. Arthur Sterling, with Alara and Liam by his side, addressed the entire company, emphasizing the new commitment to transparency, integrity, and ethical conduct. He publicly commended Alara Vance for her courage, sharp intellect, and unwavering dedication, cementing her position as an indispensable leader within the organization. The aftermath saw a rapid and necessary transformation. Alara, now more than just director of corporate integrity, became a pivotal figure in shaping the very culture of Sterling Holdings. She spearheaded initiatives to foster a more open and collaborative environment, introducing mandatory ethics training for all employees, establishing anonymous reporting channels for misconduct, and creating a new merit-based promotion system that rewarded genuine talent and integrity. Rather than nepotism or cronyism, the company, once a symbol of corporate excess and scandal, began to truly embody the values Alara championed. Under Alara's guidance, the Sterling for Schools program expanded nationwide, becoming a benchmark for corporate philanthropy. The Green Future Initiative not only met its targets, but exceeded them, positioning Sterling Holdings as an industry leader in sustainable practices. The public's perception continued its upward trajectory, and consumer trust soared. Sterling Holdings wasn't just profitable, it was respected. Amidst the professional triumphs, Alara's personal life flourished. Her relationship with Liam Sterling deepened into an undeniable love. He was her rock, her confidant, and her greatest champion. Liam, witnessing Alara's unwavering commitment to justice and her compassionate heart, found himself more deeply in love than he had ever thought possible. He admired her strength, her resilience, and the quiet dignity with which she carried herself. Despite the immense challenges she had faced, their dates, initially snatched moments after long workdays, became more frequent and meaningful. They explored the city, shared quiet dinners, and found solace in each other's company. Liam introduced Alara to his close circle of friends, who, impressed by her intelligence and genuine warmth, quickly welcomed her. She, in turn, found a new sense of belonging, a stable, loving foundation that had been missing for so long. One crisp autumn evening, under a canopy of twinkling city lights, Liam took Alara to a rooftop garden he had secretly cultivated, a serene oasis high above the bustling streets. He got down on one knee, a velvet box in his hand. "Alara," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "from the moment I truly saw you, helping my grandfather on that street, I knew you were extraordinary. You've brought light, integrity, and genuine purpose back into my family's legacy and into my life. You are the strongest, most compassionate, and most remarkable woman I've ever known. Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Tears welled in Alara's eyes. This was the dream she had once dared not even whisper, the promise of a future she had thought impossible. She nodded, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, Liam. 1,000 times. Yes." Their wedding was a beautiful, intimate affair, attended by close family and friends. Arthur Sterling, beaming with pride, gave Alara away, treating her like the granddaughter he never knew he needed. Lily, dressed in a tiny flower girl dress, skipped down the aisle, delighted to be part of the joyous occasion. It was a celebration of love, resilience, and the unexpected twists of fate that bring people together. Evelyn Thorne, now a distant memory, faded into the background of corporate history, her machinations overshadowed by the new era of integrity. Her empire crumbled, and the true extent of her past wrongdoings was slowly uncovered, leading to further legal repercussions that ensured she would never again wield power or inflict harm. Justice, slow but inevitable, had finally caught up with her. A few years later, Alara Vance Sterling stood on the balcony of her office, overlooking the gleaming cityscape. Sterling Holdings was thriving, a beacon of ethical business practices. She had transformed the company, not just financially, but morally. Her efforts had not only restored the Sterling name, but had also inspired countless others in the industry. By her side, Liam held her hand, a shared future unfolding before them. Their love had deepened, intertwined with their shared professional vision. Lily, now a bright and confident young girl, was excelling in school, nurtured by the stability and love of her new family. Alara often thought back to that fateful job interview, to the moment she chose compassion over personal ambition. It was a choice made in desperation, but it had led her down a path she could never have imagined. From a struggling orphan fighting for survival, she had become a powerful force for good, a beloved wife, and a cherished mother. Her story was a testament to the fact that kindness, even in the face of immense adversity, always finds its reward, and that true power lies not in wealth or influence, but in integrity and the courage to do what is right. The girl who helped an old man knock down, not knowing he was the CEO's grandfather, had not just found a job, she had found her destiny, her family, and a legacy far richer than any material fortune. It was a new dawn, bright and full of promise, for Alara Vance Sterling and for Sterling Holdings.